Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Bum bada bum bada bum ba bum bum bada bum bada bum ba bum.
Let me turn this up.
Bum bada bum bada bum bada bum bada bum ba bum. There we go. Well, that was my thing this morning. It was about as far as I take it. You know. I thought you might be able to join me. Dum da da dum da da dum da dum.
No, I think it's fantastic that you.
I just started off in the morning very quickly, and I just.
Yeah. What inspired that?
I don't know. It just came on. You know, I think you have to just go with your instincts sometimes. You know, have you seen those instincts sometimes when you see, like, you know, somebody does something and you want to do something that's not really kosher,
Like hum music.
Yeah, like hum music, or like
Do a little mock percussion. Yeah, it's all good. We could use it
If
on
I
this
said
show.
some things that came into my head, they just wouldn't. I was thinking something a little bit more drastic. You
It's
know,
funny you say that because I often think you don't have a filter.
say again.
I often think you don't have a filter. I don't think you don't have an editing suite in your head.
Oh,
So
I
it's interesting
do.
You say,
I do have a filter.
If I would tell you the things that came into my head, I'm like, what?
Oh no.
You
I mean, when
censor yourself.
yeah, no, there are occasions I have to do that. You know, like, it's just, I mean, I'm not going to go through it because people will go, yeah, I can't believe you just said that. But, you know, that's the way it is, I think. You know, sometimes you just have those feelings you want to act on, and then you go, no, I shouldn't do that.
Right.
But, you know, have you ever seen those films where you actually, they play out in their heads, you know, what the situation should be, or could go with?
Like
it's
Reggie
an argument.
Perrin, Reggie Perrin, where he would kill people in between. You know, he'd be sitting in a meeting and he'd imagine.
Exactly. You know, you walk into a meeting, you just, you know, like somebody says something, you want to smash their face into it and rub their face into it, and then it cuts back to, hello, how are you?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Don't you ever get that sometimes? Like, you see something, you go, oh, I'm just, no, that wouldn't be kosher. You know, no, I have to deal with this slightly differently. You know, isn't that, you know, instinct sometimes, because running in, you know, kicks away.
Would you like to talk about what's going on in your life briefly? Clearly,
there is so much going on at the moment. I mean, obviously, you know, my kids are going to kindergarten now. My son started his other preschool, and you know, we're dealing with Peace Fund Poker, which we had a big meeting on yesterday, which is going very nicely. You know, we've got right now 33, 34 celebs signed up, and we're going to have at least 40 celebs attached to that, and the tickets are going fast.
So how many tables is that? Like, how many?
We're looking, well, again...
Each celeb, do the celebs play against each other?
You'll play against everybody, so you can sit next to a celeb. I mean,
Yeah.
we got, you know, the list of celebrities is actually pretty impressive.
So it's like a raffle system. I show up, you don't know who you're going to play with, or can you request who you play with?
You can, yeah. Actually, you can, if you pay a little bit more, you can sit next to your favorite celebrity. So that's actually,
that's good.
You know, we've got Bai Ling, who you might have known, Beth Hall, which is the mom and Into the Wild. We've got Benito Martinez, an actor of Sons of Anarchy, Carl Weathers, David Marciano is an actor, Don Most, who did Happy Days, Ethan Embry, who's one of the actors from Grace and Frankie and The Walking Dead, Eugenia Cosmina, who actually came to the she's an international model. She won't be playing, but she's attending. She came to Peace Fund Games. Jill Michelle Moline, who we've actually had on the show here, comedian and actress, fantastic. Joseph David Reitman, who's a pro poker player. Camille McFadden is undercover in Disney. Kate Linder, who did The Young and the Restless. Kristana Loken, who I work with. She did Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Kelly Perrin, actor on 21 Jump Street. Kenny Johnson, Sons of Anarchy. Lou Diamond Phillips. Mackay Pfeiffer, who's at the Torchwood. Who I'm actually going to his poker tournament next week. I'll be seeing him there. And Kelly, sorry, who else? Who else we got? Martin Kleber from Pirates of the Caribbean. Nadia Dawan, Canadian actress, model, radio host. So I might even get some tips from her. Natalie Joy Pareto, actress and Beverly Hills Magazine reporter. Patrick Kilpatrick, Minority Report. Lots of other stuff. Raymond Davis, poker pro. Renee and Casey Nezoda from Storage Wars. Rex Lynn from CSI Miami. Roger Cross from 24 and The Strain. Matt Samantha Phillips. Tara Reid. Tony Dennison. Yancy Arias. The list keeps going on, man. It's just like, and it's awesome. They've really sort of stepped up on this. So it's going to be a great event, and so you can get your tickets at www.peacefunpoker.org. So
and how much are tickets?
Tickets are $75 for the buy-in, and that gets you the buy-in, but also the food and drinks, and you can actually sit next to a celeb as well. So if you pay a little bit more, yeah, and I'll be playing. Oh yeah, that's me too. Sorry, I forgot about that. I always forget it.
Who bought the seat next to you?
Actually, there is a rumor that we have Rosario Dawson and her mom. Actually, I think wanted to sit next to me. So I don't know if she's coming right now. I've got to figure that out yet. But
you need to figure that out, because if Rosario Dawson is there, I'm coming.
Well, she was supposed to.
And she's not even in Star Wars. Yeah. That says a lot. She's not even.
She's in my heart.
Who's this voice in the background there? Who could that be? Is that John Beerley?
That's Jedi Beerley.
Jedi Beerley in the background.
That's me. Good morning, gents.
John only travels if Star Wars is involved, so I'm actually impressed that he's willing to make the crusade on behalf. So there's Rosario Dawson is paying dividends right there.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it?
Bringing him out from Indiana.
Well, let's just see what we do. I mean, we'll see if we get it. But there are others.
Watch her, because I hear she cheats. I hear she's a card sharp.
That's a nice thing to put out on the radio, isn't it?
Cheat. So
no,
you are notorious.
I'm notorious to cheat. You see, that's not nice.
Nefarious car player.
Where am I cheating? I cheat in life.
Okay, well,
I'm cheating life.
I wouldn't say that.
No, I wouldn't. Look, we've got to talk about something this morning, very important. We're going into the crisis in Syria this morning because it's the largest humanitarian crisis since World War II. And these needs are steadily rising. Population displacements continue. There's an entire generation of children being exposed to war and violence, increasingly deprived of basic services, education, protection. And since the beginning of this conflict, the Syrian children have been forgotten victims of a horrific war. The world has been transfixed in recent weeks by the unfolding refugee crisis in Europe. An influx of migrants, unprecedented since World War II, have been steadily making their way through Europe, trying to get to Germany. They've gone through Greece and Sweden, and they're in Hungary right now. The first stop was in Turkey, and it was one of the first beachheads in the European Union. And from there, they embark on a journey through Western Europe, really to get to Germany. And it's estimated that 800,000 refugees are trying to get to Germany. Now, we're going to be talking about the issue of that in a second, because there are some problematic political and social economic problems that this causes. Now, the children in Syria, which is the largest producer of refugees, for 5 years, these children have experienced the trauma of war. They've had their lives upended, they've lost their homes, family members, friends, and these children refugees, now estimate about 2 million, with an estimated 5.6 inside the country facing dire situations. They're caught in the crossfire, displaced from their homes, they face extreme poverty, and at least 700,000 Syrian refugees are unable to attend school. Now, the interesting thing I find is that the amount of European Union that is opening their arms to this crisis. You have Italy has them. You have Greece and Turkey have brought them in, and Sweden and Germany and the UK, and they're all talking about opening their borders. However, what's very interesting is that not one Arab country has actually taken any refugees in. That's Qatar, that's Iran. None of the Arab countries have taken them in. I'm curious. There's a reason I'm making this statement, because once we get into the real problem of what these refugees are causing in Europe right now, it could cause a global impact as well as a European impact, as well as an American impact in the decades to come. Now, the more than 7 million children are affected by this crisis, and UNICEF reports the violence has killed more than 12,000 children in Syria, and they're not often accidental victims of war, but rather deliberately targeted. Now, this is horrific. They've been killed by snipers. They've become victims of summary executions. Schools have been bombed. More than 50% of Syrian refugees are under the age of 18. Now, in Syria, 5,000 to 14,000 schools have been damaged, destroyed, or occupied since 2011. And over 37,000 Syrian babies have been born as refugees. Now, there are a lot of impacts for kids that we have to talk about. But we will be putting out a video that sort of summarizes the other side of this. Now, a lot of these refugees are not actually refugees per se. Refugees are people that are escaping war, horror, danger for their lives, for themselves and for their families. However, in Europe, what's happening right now is that there are many men from Pakistan, from a lot of other places that are joining the swarms of refugees flooding Europe, as well as ISIS supporters that have been infiltrated into the system. Now, the interesting thing is, you'd think here in the United States we have the Mexican border. We have a wall that is 10 foot high that stops any illegal immigrants from coming in. If we have illegal immigrants coming into this country, they have to be checked, they have to be serviced. However, with political asylum, these things are waived. Therefore, into Europe comes this mass of people, some of them very legitimately refugees. However, a large number are also there to try and get a better life and try and come into Europe and take advantage of the economic welfare system that European countries tend to offer. There are things I've seen on there which I find rather disgusting. When you go into a house, somebody's house you walk into. Now, Ethan, if somebody came into your house, how would you expect them to treat you? Would you expect them to go by your rules or by their own?
My rules, of course.
Well, it's your house, right? And what about you, John? What would you think?
I would expect them to go by my rules, but I would expect that they would probably go by their own if they're coming into my home. But am I inviting them in, or are they coming in? What's the
Well, the interesting thing is we are inviting a lot of people coming in. I think that the Canadian Prime Minister, the Australian Prime Minister basically said it very easily. He said, come into the country and integrate into our system. We have you here with welcome open arms. However, if you're coming in here to destroy our system by imposing your own on our system, then please, there are plenty of other places you can go to that actually will take your way of life.
When you say that, what exactly is being destroyed? I don't understand.
Well, in other words, they come in, they do not want to integrate into. You have a religion. There is, for instance, in the economic crisis in Europe, there are soldiers taking medical supplies, water, etc., to these refugees, and they are standing by barbed wire, not allowing them to distribute it, saying, no, we don't want it, get rid of it, because there's a Red Cross on it. Because there's a Red Cross, they believe, that is. So therefore, they want to impose their Islamic way of being on that society, and that's what I'm talking about. That if you're coming in, whether it is a Mexican culture, an Islamic culture, an Israeli culture, doesn't matter. If you try to impose that on that society that already has a structure, a system, why should you change it and try and be independent in that country and not integrate into that system?
Well, so you're saying that they come here and they do what? When Canada opens their borders up to some of these refugees, what actually happens?
Well, let's say in Europe, what happens a lot of the time is that, and England is a prime example of this, they brought in a lot of refugees from the Arab states, and in England now there's a serious problem of very segregated cultures in England that are Islamic that now promote violence and death to the culture that has accepted them. So in other words, you have them on the streets, and there are banners in the streets. And now remember, this is Europe. It'll happen in the US if you're not really careful. This will happen. So be very aware of this.
I got news for you. Americans do that to other Americans already.
Yes, but it's much more drastic.
We're used to that.
You're used to, but maybe there is a slightly. You teach children a certain way of being, they will continue to do that through their life.
You're saying that there are factions of this immigrational wave. Not all, but some, that come to England or Germany or these places. I'd be surprised if they got to, so they come to this country and they decide to promote a platform of violence against their hosts.
Correct.
And
now, the way they get in, this is what happens. This is how they get in. In Hungary right now, is the first European country. They went through Turkey. The Turkish went, no, go, keep going. The Greeks couldn't handle them because we're not talking about 2,000 refugees. We're talking about 20, 30, 40, 50,000, 60, 70, 100,000 people coming through the borders.
I understand.
Hungary has now put up a chain link fence to stop them from going to places and just invading into the country, and then just Because the problem is, when they get to a certain point, they get into the European Union, they take their passports and throw them away. They come in with money, they come in with cell phones, they come in with a lot of different technology stuff. They're not trying to get away from war. They are mixed in with the real people that are in trouble, that don't have a place to go. And these other people come in who do promote violence, because now they're not being put through a system. Because you cannot... if you came through the Mexican border, you have to be processed. You have to know who you are, where you came from, what your situation is, and whether you are a true refugee. If you are not a true refugee, you're not accepted into the country. You're just an illegal alien. And that's the issue in Europe right now, is that a lot of these people coming in are illegal aliens. They're just coming to work. They're just coming in to do all other things. They're being infiltrated into those people coming into the country, and that's where the issue is. Now, we're talking about an immigration thing here, a problem. That is the truth. Because you can see it if you go and look online, and we will be putting a couple of the videos out. Because the reason I'm talking about this is because children are caught in the crossfire of this. There are a lot of children that are suffering because they are lumped in to those 100,000 people coming in there and not getting the basic supplies and necessities they want, because other people are getting it who don't necessarily deserve it. There we go. We went quiet for that for a second, didn't we? Yeah. Well, this is... John, what do you think? I mean, I know you've seen... What's your point of view in this?
It's tough. It's so tough. It's so tough to figure out, what the situation is without really having seen it firsthand. My thought, I guess, always goes to who needs the most help here. And I think in a lot of cases it is the kids. And how do you filter out those who are not there for the right reasons and focus on those who are? It's very difficult to figure that out. And I wish there were a way to, I guess, help the kids more quickly and more directly. And I feel like maybe if you started there, maybe everything else would organize itself out and sort of shake itself into place. I don't know.
Well, you must have an immigration system or a system for refugees that is controlled and not just arbitrarily letting anybody into the country. The German economy will suffer to a degree. This is really based on large corporations. Now, the funny thing is, a lot of the time I actually discuss things about large corporations and governments really having their own agenda to a degree. In this case, the Hungarians have actually stopped this way for a point, and I actually agree with them, because if I was here in California and I had 600,000 people coming into California, just arbitrarily coming in, it lowers, what it does is it brings in cheap labor, therefore lowering the cost of living for everybody else and lowering labor for everybody else that actually have a real job here. So that causes the economy to go down. Then you actually have, the issues are even greater because a lot of these people are illiterate. A lot of these people don't really want to come in here to be taken away from a system that is actually persecuting them. They're just coming here to benefit on the dime. And when they do come in, Italy, for instance, this week, Italy had a riot in one of the towns, in one of the refugee camps, because they were not being served the right type of food. They wanted their own food from their homeland. So this is my point. If you're going to be a refugee and you're going to go to somebody's house, you have to accept what they have to give to you, not what you want to decide that you want. Because that's why, if you want something that is different than what you're living in, then go somewhere. If you want the same, then you may as well stay in your own country. I know that's a really harsh thing to say, but in a sense, how do you adjust that? Well,
it's a good point there, Adrian, because there needs to be that transition period. People coming in need to understand that, okay, if this is where I want to go, this is where I want to be, then I'm going to have to make certain compromises and certain transitions to get there. You can have all of the things that you want that you had in your homeland once you're in your new home and you're settled. But yes, there's that transition period where you need to, I guess, sort of be aware that, hey, I'm coming to someplace new. And my thing is, if somebody wants to come to the United States from someplace else, we want everybody who wants to come here and be a part of it and have the opportunity to follow their dreams, come on in. But you're right. It needs to be organized so that the people who are coming in the right way can can benefit, and also don't get a bad name from some of those who are trying to come in the wrong way.
What do you think, Ethan? I mean, because if people came into the United States and started setting up secular townships and cities, etc., that then decided to change the way the American Constitution has been run for hundreds of years, would you have a problem with that?
Well, I have a problem when it's done. It's done all the time, but I don't like that. But I have to admit I'm at a loss for a lot of this. I have not heard the stories about Red Cross aid being denied, or I don't know what the procedure is in Italy or Hungary to admit these people. I know some of them need to get away from warfare. I don't know what the process is. I haven't heard about factions setting up and becoming violent or throwing away passports. So I'm probably best left out of this conversation. I have no idea about any of this stuff.
Well, let me just put some perspective on this. The European Union, really has not stepped up to know how they can actually have this. So the part of the thing is that the EU is supposed to handle refugees collectively, to act in some sort of unified country. But in practice, most EU member states don't want to take their fair share, and that means the EU rules means they don't technically have to. And as a result, the majority of incoming refugees are stuck in the same 2 or 3 countries, which quickly become overwhelmed. Now, this is bad for that country and bad for the refugees. Now, part of how this happens is the European Union rule called the Dublin Regulation, which requires refugees to stay in the first European country they arrived in until their asylum claims are processed. So, in theory, this rule is a way to prevent applicants from orbiting the EU by filing application after application in different countries until one of them finally gets approved. But in practice, it's a rule that's trapped thousands of refugees in places like Greece and Hungary and Italy. And it's a rule that many EU countries exploit in order to push much of the burden of handling refugees onto these countries who say they have no capacity to process the applications on such a scale. So that's the issue that's now facing the European countries.
Right, let them be people instead of paperwork, and that's that's the thing, and it blows me away sometimes when you think of all these countries who talk about their economic woes and their employment woes. Well, hire the people to process these applications, and benefit from the economic goodness you would get from people coming in to work. And I don't know. I just feel like bureaucracy gets in the way of everything, and we overthink things in the wrong direction, and you just end up in a quagmire like this where nothing's getting done, and you've got people who are just languishing in these situations for months or sometimes years at a time.
Well, Hungary's built a 108-mile fence of razor wire at its border, 108 miles with Serbia, which is a non-EU country, and the leaders there have vowed to deploy the army to keep migrants from entering. Now, this has caused a massive backlash onto Hungary, stating that how could you do this? But imagine how many refugees that means that they are facing with a 108-mile fence of razor wire. Now, the issue is that Hungary has basically ugly scenes, which is underscored with the desperation of these migrants coming through. Hundreds were rushed into Budapest's reopened international railway station to catch a train, only to be left feeling tricked because the police halted it on the way to the Austrian border because they didn't know what to do with them. Not only that, was because the Prime Minister Orban said the German Chancellor Angela Merkel had insisted that no refugees could leave Hungary without being registered there first, in line with the clear-cut EU rules that state asylum seekers' claims must be dealt with the initial country of entry. Hungary does not have the capability of processing these refugees. So therefore, a lot of these refugees that come in, you're talking about 2,000 to 4,000 a day that come in. So Berlin said last month it would not deport people who broke the rule, but Budapest says that it has encouraged migrants to come through its country. So they just said, come in, keep coming. So they've tried to stop this from coming through. So it's caused a massive backlash, allowing Hungary now to be as the black sheep of the EU and openly criticised by the EU leadership's plans. But it's a fault in the system. And it's basically like 26 states say, oh, they're really bad, but we're not doing anything about it. So, in a sense, this situation has to change. And what's happening? The children are suffering because they're the weakest of all. You're going to have children dying. You're going to have children malnourished. You're going to have them. And then it will cause, as we said before, it will cause more things such as riots and various things which I don't think are very pleasant. So we're talking about the Prime Minister from Hungary, Orban, and the British Prime Minister David Cameron criticised the German open door approach for spurring a vast flow of asylum seekers to Europe, many of whom have taken dangerous routes to get there. The Prime Minister David Cameron has said that the solution to the crisis lies in achieving peace in Syria, not taking more refugees. Now, the interesting thing is we look at and this is a massive problem that we have caused to a degree. I'm not talking about we, the Americans, but we, the Western world, because we went into Libya, we went into Iran, we went into Iraq, and we destabilized that region. We caused we overthrew the political people, and this is where the problem lies. You overthrow the government with a war, therefore destabilizing the region, therefore making small factions create, and then people like ISIS, when you're giving guns, etc., to the people fighting the governments there, creating a sub organization that then turns on you and then tries to destabilize other economies around the world, and now causing this refugee problem, which is now taking over a lot of the countries out of Europe.
And again, it's easy to talk about all this. You can say, oh, well, the problem lies, you need peace in Syria, not taking in refugees. Well, guess what? There's no peace in Syria, and refugees are still coming. It's, everybody talks about it, but, where are the international heads that are getting together to try to figure out a solution and get it taken care of?
Well, exactly. And the reason we're talking about this is that we should be looking at this. And again, my issue with it is it's not about the refugees coming into the country. It's about the processing of the correct people who are seeking political asylum. That is the issue, because what ends up happening is that other people then get left by the wayside, which affect children and affect the people that really, really need the care. We have to make sure that these people are processed and something's put in place that actually allows those refugees to be put through the correct process. We would never accept the borders of Mexico to be opened arbitrarily to as many refugees that wanted to come into this country. Nor should it happen in any other country where we have people infiltrating those systems to get into the European countries to cause and destabilize the region by causing terrorist attacks. And that is one of the reasons why I think it's very important to make an issue about this problem. Now, we talked about children. Let's just talk about what happens. Child labor. It is one of the facts of life that's in Syria prior to the war, but the humanitarian crisis has greatly exacerbated that problem. As a result, many children now involved in economic activities that are mentally, physically, or socially dangerous and which limit or deny their basic right to education. So this is some of the issues that are facing our world right now. In the most extreme forms, such as child recruitment by armed forces and groups or sexual exploitation, child labour is a grave violation of children's rights. Now, the Syrian crisis dramatically reduced livelihood opportunities, and that's why we have this humanitarian crisis, because of impoverished millions of households in that region. However, what's really interesting to me is why, if you are part of a type of organization, why not go to Egypt? Why not go to Qatar? Or why not go to the Arab Emirates? These are very, very rich countries. Why are they all coming to the European Union? Interesting. If you look at the amount of refugees, and we will be posting a video about this, the amount of refugees taken in by these Arab states is zero. Whereas, for instance, on Monday, Monday of this week, we have France and Britain offering to haven about a combined 44,000 immigrants, which is one of the latest efforts to cope with the worst immigration crisis since World War II. So why is it we can't talk to the Arab states to take some of this and then not have the issues that we will be faced with, or the European countries will be faced with, which are segregation of communities, and then with segregation comes fear, comes hatred, and comes violence. That is the issue that I have some problem with. There are organizations trying to make a difference. Mercy Corps, they deal with poverty, conflict, and disaster. They are the global challenges that Mercy Corps has been responding to since 1979, helping more than 258 million people survive emergencies. There are Doctors Without Borders. We have our organisation out of Australia, Doctors Without Borders Australia, that we help out of Cambodia. But in Europe, we have Médecins Sans Frontières, which is MSF, or Doctors Without Borders, one of the world's leading independent international medical relief organisations, working with more than 70 countries worldwide and with operational centres and national offices in 21 countries. That's another organisation. Or the International Rescue Committee, founded in 1933 at the request of Albert Einstein. The IRC delivers life-saving care to people fleeing conflict and national disaster. These are things and places to go to possibly discuss this issue and see maybe they might be able to offer some sort of solution. Now, John, this morning, Peace Fund Radio correspondent John Bailey is going to bring us the updates of the week, and I'm sure the hero of the week as well.
Yes, well, I was thinking about this topic about refugee children, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could find a hero of the week who understands the plight of refugee children? So in doing some research, I did find a young man named Sayid Abdullaev, who was born in Kyrgyzstan to a father who was a shepherd and a mother who worked long hours at a food truck to support her family. Sayid and his family are Uyghurs. It's spelled Uyghurs, pronounced Uyghurs, an ethnic minority that's persecuted throughout Eastern and Central Asia. They're most prominent in China, but there are many former Russian states and other Eastern European countries where they have a very high population of these people. After a group of Peace Corps volunteers taught Sayid English, because he didn't have the educational opportunities as many other kids had, because a lot of times these Uyghur families live in poverty without a lot of access to education. He learned English from these Peace Corps volunteers, and they were able to set up something with the U.S. State Department to arrange for Sayid to come to the United States in 2007, where he was placed with a host family in Arizona. Now, since he had been 10 years old, even when he was still back in Kyrgyzstan, Sayid had volunteered to help children in need. Here, at his new school in the United States, he met many other students who were also refugees from many different places, from many different cultures, many different belief systems. And one day during lunch, Sayid posed a series of questions to a gathered crowd of American students and many of the fellow students who were also refugees from several countries. He asked, "What's the best way for us to get to know each other? What's the best way to get to know our new community? And what's the best way to get our new community to know us?" Sayid's answer was to found a nonprofit organization called Youth for Peace to conduct cultural presentations at schools, churches, community centers, and other local organizations where they talked about their cultures, religions, and traditions. They shared foods and dances from their native countries, and they organized community service projects and mentoring programs, raising more than $100,000 for social services projects in the community, which I think is just a fantastic idea. I mean, here you have these kids from all over the world who are refugees, many of them there for political asylum, who have undergone all kinds of dangers and troubles in their homelands, who are coming here and saying, okay, we're going to band together, we're going to learn everything we can about each other, and we're going to put together these projects to help the community. Sayid also joined another project called Kids for Kids, where he helped children with disabilities gain opportunities for social entrepreneurship, education, and leadership. After Sayid graduated high school in the United States, he went to the College of Southern Idaho, but his studies there were cut short when his mother fell ill back in Kyrgyzstan. He went home to Kyrgyzstan to care for his mother. He cared for her for a year until she passed away. And during that time, Sayid saw that the persecution of his people back home had only gotten worse during his time in the United States. He received death threats for his long hair. He was a victim of physical violence. And as a young gay man, he also knew that he could be killed for his sexuality. On the day of his mother's funeral, as if the universe had willed this into existence, he received a letter of acceptance to the University of Pennsylvania, and he returned to the United States with $30 to his name and only 80 pounds on his bones. His new host family, Dave and Monica Willard, gave him a home, but his acceptance letter to the university was useless to him because he was undocumented, which meant that he couldn't apply for financial aid. So via private scholarships and crowdsourcing, he was finally able to go back to college. He recently graduated from the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied political science and diplomatic history. He applied for and was recently granted political asylum. And while he was in college, he co-founded yet another nonprofit organization called Asylum Connect at asylumconnect.org as a resource for LGBTQ youth who are seeking asylum in the United States. Sayid currently serves as the youth representative to the United Religions Initiative at the United Nations. He regularly gives speeches at UN headquarters in New York City and around the world. His various humanitarian projects have taken him to countries including Thailand, Egypt, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkey, France, Germany, and Switzerland, among many others. These are all boots-on-the-ground efforts where he has been on the ground in these countries, working directly with refugee children, talking to presidents and other government officials to try to let them know exactly what these kids need, and working out real-world solutions to get these children the aid that they need. He's 23 years old now, and again, he's been helping kids since he was 10 years old around the world. In fact, I think the only place Sayid hasn't made a difference yet is outer space, but even that could very soon change. He is a finalist for the Kruger Crown Rising Star program, which is working right now to send one lucky youth leader into orbit on a space plane. The winner will be announced in November. Sayid said that he's less interested in actually going to space than he is in showing refugee children around the world that you can be a global and even a galactic citizen regardless of where you came from. He believes that we should all take the word impossible and add an apostrophe, which makes it I'm possible, and follow our dreams to whatever heights they take us to. So from refugee to potential astronaut, and for all the children around the globe who he has protected, educated, and aided along the way, Sayid Abdullaev is our newest Peace Fund Radio hero of the week.
A very uplifting story, John. Thank you for bringing that. And you know, again, we're talking about refugees this morning, and he's a prime example. You know, coming from a family that really needed the help from somebody, and was brought into the country to do that in a legal way, in a processed way. And that is what we've been talking about this morning, how many of these children and families that are out there right now suffering and in the heat and without food and water. Some have died. 2,800 have died in the process of moving from across the countries, traveling on foot across hundreds of miles of terrain. That those people that are infiltrating those systems, or those hundreds of thousands of migrants, are not necessarily the right people to be inviting into the countries of the West.
Well, and to you know, as we said earlier, again, I don't know what the solutions are to these questions, but we need to come up with something because of the children who are being harmed in the process. You know, another one of the things that happens lots of times when you have large groups of unfamiliar people together in unfamiliar places, there is sexual abuse that happens to children. And there are even instances where people are basically selling their young daughters as wives in some situations. It's something that we just need to figure out a way to take care of these kids. And you know, luckily we have stories like Sayid's of a young man who is, you know, looking at the process, familiar with the process, having gone through the U.S. State Department to come to the United States in the first place, having sought and received political asylum in the United States. He's on track to become a U.S. citizen now. And you know, he knows the system, and he knows directly what it does to kids. He's seen it directly affecting children, and by working with the United Nations directly as he does right now, you know, becoming a young leader who can maybe help solve some of those issues. And there are so many other kids out there who are doing similar things. I've been I've been in contact with lots of new heroes of the week over the past few days, and I have some really exciting things coming up. We've had lots of heroes of the week whose families were originally from India, who have traveled to India. Ruchita Zaparte, Neha Gupta, Risha Shukla. But we're actually going to have our first hero of the week soon, who actually lives in India now. She's born and raised in India, doing some really incredible things. She'll be calling in a few weeks. And I've also arranged an interview with our first hero of the week from the United Arab Emirates. And these are all kids who are working directly in situations like this with children who are victimized, children who are falling through the cracks, and working to protect, educate, and aid those children. So we've got some really uplifting stories coming up, and I'm not going to say too much more because I don't want to spoil some of these great stories, but we've got some good things coming up for sure. There is hope out there in the world.
I agree, but we have to actually make known the issues that arise from a lot of things.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people, especially media, jump on the bandwagon of how bad somebody's doing something, but they're not really looking and exploiting the issue at hand, which is there are a lot more complex issues when you're dealing with refugees than is normally known to anybody in general. Now, kids that are vulnerable and that are in places like Syria are susceptible to malnutrition and diseases related to poor sanitation. Many suffer diarrhea diseases and dehydration. So they're vulnerable to sexual abuse and exploitation in unfamiliar and overcrowded conditions. So without the proper income to support their families and fearful of their daughters being molested, parents, especially single mothers, may opt to arrange marriages for girls as young as 13. Now, that's why you have the refugee problem. This is what my issue is that these are the people that really need the help, not the young men who basically want to come into a country to destabilize the region, do it their way, or come in and try and lower the standard of the wage because they'll do it cheaper than anybody else. Because this is the issue. You will then have a destabilized economy when you bring in that type of workforce. Schools and the journeys to them inside Syria are the front line of the crisis. It is a problem that needs to be addressed. However, is it being addressed correctly? Look online and see how you make yourself a little bit aware of some of the things that are going on. You can see videos. When I talked earlier on today, the issues about the Red Cross being stopped to handing out their you can look at it, Red Cross, if you type it into the Google, Red Cross is denied, supplies are refused by refugees. The videos and the reports will come up on that. If you look at the horrific images from Hungary, those reports will come up and show you what is going on there, but there is a much deeper issue at hand, and think about it when you see those images and those videos. Now, Hungary is the front line right now based on this, and Mr. Orban, the Prime Minister, has defended the controversial project of putting up the 108-mile fence, insisting Hungary is protecting Europe according to European rules that say borders can be crossed only in certain areas in a controlled way and after registration. Again, I liken to the war we have here in the US. That is the way we deal with it, and I think it is dealt with correctly. Therefore, people are put into the right areas, and you don't have a mass immigration issue. I know, Ethan, you've not been able to look at this, because I know sometimes we talk about issues that suddenly come up, and we're not very familiar with them. But is there anything in here that spurs any comments from you?
I would really prefer to look at the issue more closely. I don't have a solution in mind for any of this at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, the fears on this bottleneck of this 3.5 meter high fence that Hungary's built it could cause dangerous bottlenecks in Serbia as thousands of people continue the desperate journey along the Balkan corridor in search of a better life. Now, this is what I'm saying. When they get into Serbia, if you go into Serbia now, and you can again look at this online, look at passports and identity documents thrown away. There are piles and piles of them thrown away.
Why do they do that?
Because they go in seeking political asylum, and they say, well, they throw their document away if they're a jihadist, if they are somebody that is not would be not accepted as an asylum seeker, if they are a young migrant worker that is not going in as an asylum seeker but just basically want to get into a country to come in to work, they throw their documents and say, well, I left my documents in in Syria, wherever I came from. But if you look at them, they're coming from Africa, they're coming from Pakistan, they're coming from other areas to get into the European Union under this asylum, political asylum basis. That's what the real issue is. So we have 5 minutes left on the show. It's a very I'm rather heated about this in a sense because, you know, I always think of my children, you know, and how it will affect, you know, we never tend to address a problem until it really affects us personally. And that's globally pretty much. And I think it's very important to address issues and see how we can, somebody will come up with a solution. Somebody will have the solution, but it has to be discussed. And that's what we do here at Peace Fund Radio. We discuss these points and for and against. And some of you may have a totally different point of view, and we'd love to hear from you at some point. And we will be putting out some of these videos and informational pieces on Peace Fund Radio Facebook pages and through our Twitter pages. Now, we've got, 4 minutes left, Ethan? I think.
Yes. About 3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes. So I just want to go back. The Peace Fund is going to be putting on our annual Peace Fund Poker Tournament this year, coming up on September 26th at the Microsoft facility in Playa del Rey. We still have positions for players if you want to come and sit next to one of the many celebrities we have. And some of the great sponsors are coming in to do this. And we're also looking for volunteers. We're looking for a couple of volunteers that might want to help help us coordinate some of the events like the gift bags and some of the
what's in the
corralling.
Gift bag?
Oh well, right now we've got several items and we're not going to mention that, but those are gift bags for celebrities mainly. If we get enough players and enough sponsors, we'll add a few more for the people. But we do have some exciting prizes. The World Poker Tour has given us some really interesting prizes to hand out. We've got a couple of other offers coming in, so it's really good. So it's going to be a really fun day. We're going to be tweeting it. We're going to be periscoping it. You'll be able to see it live online. If you can't join us, you can support some of the celebrities like me. Go to my page. Go to www.peacefundpoker.org and you can support me during the tournament, which will do two things. Is a tax-deductible donation. It will give us the monies that we're looking for some of our initiatives this year for the Peace Fund, and it will help the players get chips on the table, which is the fun part, to see whether they can win some of the prizes that have been set out and donated by some of the generous corporations that we are partnership with. So it is a big event. It is a fun event. So don't miss it. Either don't miss it online or don't miss it on the day itself. You can be one of those people sitting next to one of your favourite celebs or meet one of the favourite celebs you might never have seen before. So please come and support the Peace Fund Poker event September 26th. John, do you have anything else that we need to discuss?
Well, as always, everybody can go to thepeacefund.org, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, The Peace Fund and Peace Fund Radio. Follow Adrian at AdrianPaul1 on Twitter, Ethan at Combat Radio. Listen to Ethan on Fridays on Combat Radio, where he has the biggest, coolest names in sports, movies, music, martial arts to talk about the issues that matter to you. And Ethan, don't you guys have an event coming up really soon?
No. We're out of time. We don't have an event coming up.
Well, we've got to run, John, I think, because of this. I will be actually also doing a sword demonstration. One part of it will be for the Peace Fund, October 10th in Seattle, Washington. There will be a new sign-up page for Microsoft and non-Microsoft employees. If you want to join that fab event, that will be happening October 10th, and it will be posted very shortly on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us today, for all the people that actually support the Peace Fund and those of you that will be supporting the Peace Fund, and for those of you supporting some of these refugees and looking at this issue. I want to leave you with a quote with one of my favorite actresses and humanitarian, Angelina Jolie. It is sickening to see thousands of refugees drowning on the doorstep of the world's wealthiest continent. No one risks the lives of their children in this way except out of utter desperation. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll talk to you next week.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.